Hey everybody, so the reason I haven't posted a video in a while is because I've been working on this thing, which is the 9x9 Diametric Hexahedron, which is an original design of mine, and this is the other half. So the main reason I built this thing was mostly just as an experiment to see how far I could push one of my designs and actually just the limits of puzzle modifying and seeing what's actually possible with handmade extensions. And I'll show you what I mean here. If I turn a layer like this, these pieces are all unmodified here. These are original stock pieces, and all of these have been extended this far. I'll zoom up a bit here. So like this corner piece is so much taller than anything else I've built so far. So I really don't think I'll ever be extending further than this. Anything past this would be so extreme that it would become unsolvable, I think. Which the solve of something like this would just be stupidly difficult and time-consuming. But the turning is actually amazingly good on all the layers. I'll kind of demonstrate that here really quick. Oh, it is kind of hard to grab the right one sometimes. And actually with this, you should be able to, yeah, definitely does the one finger thing. And I'll zoom up on some of the extensions again so you can see the quality of this stuff. So as with all my other puzzles, this was built only with ABS plastic sheeting and epoxy sculpt. There's no 3D printing of any type, and there's no spray paint on any of the surfaces. So this will always remain the same exact color like this. And this was built out of a Shengshao 9x9, just because, well, I had that lying around, and I think it's a really good mechanism for modding of any size. They always remain really stable and smooth. And also, this is the first puzzle I've built where I didn't have to hand cut any stickers, which I'm extremely happy about because of how much time that saved me. All these square stickers were just from stock pre-cut sheets because, you know, why have the vinyl cutter cut them if they're already made? But everything else was done on my vinyl cutter. This was my first attempt at doing that too, and I think it turned out pretty nicely. So all these rounded corners I didn't have to cut myself, which is great. And it really makes all these pieces a lot more uniform. I mean, they're perfectly uniform because it was done by computer, basically. And the size of this thing is pretty intimidating, even compared with this puzzle, the 5x5, which in itself is a big puzzle. This just is so much bigger, and it's extremely heavy too because all the extensions are completely solid. There's no hollow pieces at all, so this weighs quite a bit. I mean, you can see how these pieces are all unmodified here, so the normal puzzle would have stopped right here. You can see that. So all of this stuff is just an entire chunk of plastic that's been added on to basically 3 of the sides, and then of course extended all the way out in both directions like that. So to get a reference of the size, the longest side length here is just about 8 3/4 inches. So this is probably one of the largest puzzles I'll ever build, just in terms of actually how long it is like that. So as you might expect with something like this, if you've seen my video on the 5x5 and the other ones, this is just unbelievable at making patterns on. So that's what I'm going to focus on this video mostly. I will at some point be scrambling this, which I'm really not looking forward to, but that'll probably be a separate video because that'll be pretty involved, I think. But let's just do a bunch of patterns right here. So usually when demonstrating patterns on a puzzle, you'll do a checkerboard pattern. And with this one, there are actually 15 distinct checkerboard patterns that you can do. And I'll try to go through these as logically as possible. So you can see here how numbers 1 through 4 are just turning one layer. And in these diagrams, this is just a one-axis representation of the patterns. So obviously it'll be applied to all 3 axes. But 1 through 4 is just turning one layer on each side individually. Then 5 through 7 is turning 2 layers together on each side. And then 8, 9, and 10, those are turning 2 layers on each side, but now they're separated. Then 11 and 12 are turning 3 layers together on each side. 13 and 14 are turning 3 layers together on each side, but now there is one split apart from the other one. And then 15 is turning 4 layers on each side. And this is assuming that you keep the core, or the axes, stationary the whole time, so we'll never be turning down the center. So here's the first pattern, just turning the outer layer, and actually this is probably one of my favorite ones. And of course, each pattern has 2 very different sides, or 2 very different halves to it. And then looking at both sides at once. That's pretty wild, isn't it? And here's the second one. There's one side and the other. I have to be really careful holding this thing. And then halfway in between. And here's number 3. I really love the intersecting pattern on this one. And the other side looks like this. I usually prefer this side. I think most patterns look better from this side, but you know, there's halfway through. You can really see how far these extensions are sticking up from all the yellow faces, which are unmodified here. It's pretty extreme. Here's number 4. I really like on these ones how you can very obviously see the original side of the puzzle, and then just part of it has been shifted around through itself. I think that looks really cool. And you've just got like a standard 3x3 cube floating in the middle like that, surrounded by this crazy border. So that's number 4. Here's number 5. I do like on these ones how, if you look past this piece, you just have these big flat yellow, blue, and red sides there. Forms kind of a cool star pattern. Like that. If you watch, or if you've already seen my 3x3, I guess 3, 4, and 5 videos on these ones, you'll notice that a lot of these patterns are equivalent to the other ones, just with a lot more pieces, and they're grouped together, but these will look a lot these will look very similar to some of the other patterns when they're grouped together in larger chunks like this. So this one looks especially cool from the side view like this. But again, I think they always look best from this side here, with the standard corner, the front. And number 6. This thing is really awkward to hold. And the other half. So they're getting more and more complicated each time. At least it looks like to me. I like this part here. Splitting off in opposite directions like that. And number 7. Here's number 8. And here's number 9. You can still kind of see in the yellow background there how that's the original side, and everything else has been turned around through it like that. And if you remember back from pattern 1, how we had that kind of triple fan pattern thing going on, whatever you want to call it, you still have that, it's just now broken up a little bit more. So a lot of these patterns are actually very similar to each other. And here's number 10, which you could probably guess by the diagram is the traditional full checkerboard pattern. So there's the first half there, and the other half. I'll give you a side view like this too. So this could be considered the most complicated of all the checkerboard patterns just because there's no pieces grouped together. Actually, I'll go ahead and zoom up a little bit more on this one. You can see how these extensions are so tall that the yellow pieces down here are so much in the shadow you can't even really see the color anymore. So that would make for a very difficult solve, which I'll probably have to deal with at some point. See how the red just, it's also because the light's here, but the red basically just looks like black, even though in between all those green and white are actually red squares down there. And this being the full checkerboard pattern, this is the traditional test of whether a puzzle is fully functional or not. So there you go, it's fully functional. And here's number 11. And this basically reduces it down to a 3x3 checkerboard because each section is 3 pieces, you know, obviously 9 divided by 3. So this is as close as to the standard 3x3 checkerboard as you can get on this puzzle. And also just happens to have a 3x3 in the middle just because it's a 9x9. So there's the other half like that. While the full, number 10, the full checkerboard is really crazy looking by itself, I kind of do prefer some of these more grouped together patterns on this puzzle. I think these look, not this one specifically, but look a little bit more interesting than just the full checkerboard pattern. And number 12. And number 13. These are all starting to look kind of similar, aren't they? And the other side. This one you can really see the original shape. And here's number 14. And the other half. On this one, and with a couple of the other ones too, these really tall center corner pieces are kind of sticking out by themselves, which looks kind of cool. So then looking at it halfway down like this, you can really see again the original shape of the puzzle there. And here's number 15, the last one. And the other side looks like this, which basically doesn't really look like a pattern at all, except for a couple little pieces there, because almost the whole thing is not in a pattern. And out of these 15 checkerboards, I actually think the first and the last one are my favorite two out of all of them. And for a puzzle this extreme, I really don't think I'll ever make another one of these. I think this is kind of a one-off experiment build. But of course, all my other puzzles, at least 2x2 through 7x7, can be purchased through me. If you want to order any of those, feel free to contact me through the links in the description there. And as for this puzzle, I will be making a lot more videos on my channel for this. I think there's probably a lot of other interesting content that I can make with this. Like I said earlier, I'll probably be doing a full scramble and possibly a solve video on this at some point. That's just based on whether I actually feel like solving this on camera, which will be quite a challenge. But it'll probably happen at some point soon. So keep an eye out for that, and thank you for watching.